All right, everyone, we are live. As we wait for our amazing guests, please go ahead and let me know in the chat where you are tuning from. I am so curious. So put in the chat for me where you are tuning from. Wonderful. Who do we have here? I know I definitely have someone from Mexico. Say hi to us. Let us know that you are here. Just doing a sound test right now. Thank you, everyone. So put for me in the chat where you are tuning from. I am very curious. All right. So as we get started, I wanted to share a little bit of a story just so that you all understand why I brought our amazing guests here. So the story is, I will say, my goodness, what year was that? I think it was close to 2006. I was in university studying in Montreal. I was studying business. And what happened was I had not the best childhood. I came to Canada because I wanted to study, but the truth is, because of such a dysfunctional childhood, I felt that, I wanted to have a fresh start. I wanted to start a new career. Hey, Mar, how's it going? Mar from Mexico, Sona from Atlanta. Nice to see you both. So yeah, the story was, I left my country of birth because I came from a very dysfunctional family. My father was an alcoholic. I came to Canada because I wanted to study, but I also wanted to go as far away as possible. And so the idea of going back just felt daunting. And that is when I decided to immigrate. And of course, I met an amazing lawyer who helped me at the time get my permanent resident status. And that was a game changer for me because if it wasn't for that law firm, I would have never been able to work at an amazing company like Deloitte. I wouldn't have been working in Canada for over 15 years in the corporate world. And I wouldn't have been able to become a career coach and help other immigrants have a better life. So I'm going to bring that lawyer back then who helped me. He is now a mayor. Mitchell, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here and see you again.
Yes. Oh my God. We've reconnected after so many years. So, Mitchell, I wanted to ask you a question, and that is, what inspired you to start, the law firm with your brother?
Well, I graduated from McGill with a Bachelor of Commerce and then law. So I was in McGill for about 7 years. And after law, I wasn't sure exactly what to do. I ended up working at a very large law firm. It was called Ogilvy Renault. There were a couple of hundred lawyers. And my brother was also working in another firm and thinking to myself, what would it be like to be my own boss? How would it be if we started something on our own? And it was 1990 and we just did it. And it was great because first of all, who you're dealing with. We were two young lawyers. He had a few years ahead of me. He graduated also from McGill. And I wanted to do something that would be exciting and help people. So we started with various areas of law. And one day, Herb had one of his clients who needed help with a domestic. And he was able to regularize her status. She was illegal in Canada, but we were able to find a way of taking her outside of the country, bringing her back, and in one day getting her work permit, and that gave her the right to permanent resident status. So that's where it all started. It started with that, and then we started reaching out to all different agents around the world, finding different agents, finding different representatives, and expanding our practice to all areas of immigration law. And it's been very rewarding. It was certainly a good choice because at Ogilvy Renault, it was really corporate law that I was doing, and I wasn't excited about it. But when you help people and you're able to change their quality of life, you feel like you're making a difference.
Absolutely.
So it's one person at a time, and you really feel rewarded by helping people like you. And look where you are today. Look
Thank
how
you.
far you've come. Very happy to see that.
Thank you so much. And I think a lot of my listeners here resonate around, doing something that creates a social impact. And don't be shy, everyone. Drop in the chat, engage. If you have any questions, please feel free to do that. But who here, feels that it is important for them when they're doing a job? It's not just about, doing these tasks that you enjoy, but who here resonates with the idea of doing something that creates a social impact? Drop in the chat for me if that resonates with you. I'm so curious to know. All right. So, you've had a very long career as a lawyer, and I think there's so many lessons that people can learn from you. I mean, lesson number one, it's about doing something where you're making a social impact. But the interesting thing here that will resonate with a lot of my career transitioners is you went through a career transition. You've been a lawyer for a very, very long time and you decided to pivot. So, can you tell us a little bit more about why you decided to pivot into being a mayor? Was there like a pivotal moment for you that made you decide that? I am so curious.
Well, I always wanted to do things that would help people. So before, in my teens, I was involved in various charitable organizations and also language right organization Alliance Quebec to protect English rights in Quebec. And I got involved in politics through basically community work because municipal politics particularly is dealing with individuals at a very basic level, helping people with daily life, improving their quality of life. And I ran for council in 1990 and I was elected as a 29-year-old guy. And I enjoyed it. And I've been doing it now, I guess it's 35 years. So
Wow.
becoming mayor wasn't a plan. It was just the city council work in a city of $35,000, 35,000 people is not like a full-time job. So I was able to run my law practice and still give back to the community. But becoming mayor is a full-time job. So I've been doing that now for 8 years. This month it's 8 years. And
Exciting.
that's really rewarding because really you get to deal with 35,000 people and understand their needs and try to
That's it.
find services and programs that they can enjoy and make sure the facilities are good and the streets are good and that people can have enjoyment here in Côte Saint Luc. I think Herb must be lost onto the
Yes,
wrong link.
Herb
Ah,
is
there he
here
is.
and he
Oh, he
comes in at
did
the
come.
right time as we're
Perfect.
talking about, getting in, expanding, it sounds like this is something that is running in the family, Herbert. Um, just wanted to quickly introduce you. So Herbert is now the managing partner of the firm. He took over, Mitchell's duties and tell us, Herbert, a little bit. You mentioned, when we talked yesterday, you mentioned that it's running in the family, the whole, helping the city and working within politics.
Yes, over 30 years ago, I moved from my city where I grew up, Côte Saint Luc, to the West Island. There was an opportunity to buy a home there for my young family, and it was a youthful community with a lot of opportunities, and I became part of that community. And then the city had a forced merger with the city of Montreal. Back in 2001. And I became part of the demerger movement because I felt we were losing the quality of our city by becoming part of Montreal. We're quite a distance from some of the services that Montreal was offering. And we felt that we could do things better if we managed our own facilities. So I became part of the merger movement, and as a result, I became very political active at the municipal level, and I ran for council in Dollar-des-Ormeaux. In 2005, I was elected, and I ended up serving 4 mandates, 16 years on council. And so I combined community service in my city together with working with my brother in a law firm that was focused on also helping people in the area of immigration. So
That's amazing.
I had 2 roles. I wear 2 hats. I would leave the office at 6 o'clock to attend meetings at the city in Dollar des Amours as a counselor. And that went on for, as I said, 16 years. I was doing that.
Wow. And again, I see a pattern here in terms of, you both, started out more within law. What was driving you was creating that social impact. And then you realized that you could do things, you could improve, you could do things differently. So you were change agents, and you decided to expand, the scope and the scale of your impact by making those, transitions in your career. And I think I have, people here who have a very entrepreneurial mindset. Herbert, you shared with me something that cracked me up, and I could totally resonate with. You mentioned that you've always, been more of an entrepreneur versus someone who would work, as an employee. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, when I first graduated from McGill University and did my bar at the École de Barreau, we all have to do stages. So I did my first month in a law firm, a commercial corporate law firm, working for other lawyers and met stage and learning. And then subsequently, I was hired by another law firm, but it didn't quite fit my profile working for other people. I'm more independent. I have more of my own ways of doing things, and I'm very independently minded. So I like to run my own show, and I like to do things my way. So it didn't always necessarily work with the senior partners. So I decided I would break out and be courageous and start my own law firm, which I did after I really only worked for 2 years for a law firm. And then I decided that I would open up my own firm, but always not alone. I was always in association with other more senior lawyers so I could learn from them, but more in a working relationship. And that's where I was able to grow, in more of a colleague, associate level with other lawyers, more experienced than myself. And I learned an awful lot from them. And when I was ready to really open up a law firm, I waited. My brother had also gone the pathway of working for a law office before he before he also decided that he would like to also break away from working for somebody and opening up our own entrepreneurship law firm. And that's when we decided in approximately 1991, in the early 90s, to open up a law firm. And we looked at the same time in an area where I felt where there was a need, where there was a niche. We looked for a niche law practice because as a small law firm, we wanted to pick up the slack or pick up an area of law where there was very few lawyers at the time, I will say, practicing essentially full time in the area of immigration. Montreal had very, very few, a handful, if any, immigration lawyers. I could name a couple, 2 or 3 that I knew of. And really, I felt that there was an opportunity to build an immigration law firm in those early years. And we did, and we were inundated with work, not only from clients directly, but we also established associateships, professional relationship with other law firms. Medium and large, even large law firms who didn't do any immigration in their offices, had no immigration lawyers. So when an immigration problem came up, inevitably, when they found out that this is what we're doing, we would have a network, and they would refer us their clients, their corporate clients sometimes, who needed a caregiver to take care of their elderly mother, or needed help to sponsor their spouse, who they ended up marrying, who was not Canadian and was not a permanent resident. So, they needed help with work permits because their corporate clients needed a temporary foreign worker. So we really developed relationships with other firms, and we worked with them, and also we went overseas, as we discussed, and that was really very much an attraction for both my brother and I to be in the area of immigration, because back then, in order to get your clients, there was no social media per se.
Yeah.
It didn't exist. So you had to
go out, brick and mortar.
Yeah, you had to go out and advertise in the newspapers, right? You had to put an ad in. You had to write an article. And we did that in newspapers and in publications. There was one newspaper publication called Canada News. It was essentially a newspaper which was supported by the government of Canada and which was distributed at the Canadian Embassy to inform people about the different pathways to immigration. Because even the Canadian government didn't have a website. There was no website. There was no internet to provide people with this information. So they were desperately seeking information to find out what are the pathways to come to Canada? How can I go and work there? How can I study there? How can I immigrate there? So the only way to find out was either through the printed media or through lawyers such as ourselves who are traveling the globe. And that's what we did. We made seminars. We did even promotional videos with the old VHS VCR.
Oh my goodness. What are those?
We went to
For those of you who don't know what those are, big cassettes, that they don't even exist. You probably find them in the museum now.
Yeah, we found this magazine called Canada News, and we started advertising in there, and we found a lot of agents that were advertising there too, and we ended up in Tunisia as a result of Canada News and many other places. I remember the first time I went to London, we couldn't get the work permit, a U.S. visa to go to the United States for the day for a particular client who was a domestic. So because we couldn't get a visa for her and she was a member of the Commonwealth, she came, I think, from Grenada, she didn't need a visa to go to London. So he said, hey, maybe we can do that. It seems like a long trip, but she really wants to get her work permit. So we actually went to London. And we flew down to London. She didn't need a visa. She got, she went for her interviews, got her work permit, came back to Canada. But talking about not having any social media or internet, my grandfather was an immigrant. He came from Poland. And I told him I'm going to London for the first time. And he said, oh, you go to London for the first time? I have some relatives there. They must still be there. Because I remember when I was in Poland, in a small town of Goniec, my uncle came to visit me and he told me he had a son who was a doctor and a daughter who was a teacher. And that was like 1927. But maybe they're still alive. Check them out. This is the name. So I looked in the phone book and I looked at the name and he said it was Viner, but it ended up being Weiner. And I called the first 5 names and I said, are you the son of Joe Weiner, who's a doctor, or who knows what a doctor? He had a doctor and he had a teacher, and a guy had answered the phone and he says, yeah, I'm the doctor. And we ended up having this whole big family in London every time we went. So, I mean, that's just an example of how you had to, in immigration or in life, there were different ways of finding out how you can connect with people.
It was through the paper again, through the printed telephone directory, which no longer exists.
Right. It was I remember looking at it in that paper, the white pages.
And that's just an example of the type of grit, right, that you need to have in order to be successful. Something that, people ask me a lot is, and we'll answer those questions as well, because now we have experts and I try not to, I definitely don't want to, cross that line. But what I tell people is you need to have the behavior of someone who is not just going to be dependent and have things, handed to them on a silver platter. You got to advocate for yourself. You can't be reliant on anyone. You got to look for the answers. And what I'm hearing in your stories is you have that personal stake because you did that for yourselves. And you are inspiring your clients to do that as well, to have that grit, to look for the answers, despite not having social media, despite all of these hurdles. Wonderful. I want to get to some of the questions from the audience. Someone has asked, and I think, Mar, you are there. So if I, ask this incorrectly, or if there's anything else that you think of, please add to it. But the big question is, what type of visa should people try to look for when they are trying to get work in Canada? There is the concept of a digital nomad in Germany. Is there something similar in Canada? And I think that's a great question, because there are a lot of, remote workers and freelancers. What's your advice for those types of, people?
If you are working remotely, which is outside of Canada, you don't require a visa or a work permit, because you're not coming to Canada to work in our country. You're working outside. where you need or even studying online. If you're studying online, I can think of a student in India who's studying online if such a program exists in Canada and they can do it online, there's no need for them to come and get a study permit. You're only required a study permit if you need to enter Canada and you to study at a physical location here, or you need to do a co-op training. Then you're going to need a study permit.
So it has to be a physical location in order to enter Canada.
Well, in order to require a study permit, you're going to.
Gotcha.
The purpose of a study permit is to get permission to study inside Canada. That's the purpose of a study permit, not to study at a Canadian institution abroad. I mean, there are a number of colleges that have set up satellite schools in different countries, and you can go to one of their satellite schools without ever putting your foot into Canada. You certainly don't need an entry visa for that. But
what if you wanted, though, to be located in Canada and you were enrolled like virtually? What do you advise?
You would have to explain to the Canadian government why it is that you need a visa to come to Canada. It's got to make sense. For example, if you're studying at a program abroad and part of your training requires you to come here for 6 months to do a training program, that would make sense why I need a 6-month permit to come to Canada. But if there's no reason to being as I just want to see the country, I want to come and visit as a tourist, well, then you're going to have to justify yourself to come here on a visitor visa like any other applicant who's coming as a tourist to visit the country, right?
And that brings me to one of the big questions that a lot of people ask. What is the best pathway? We talked about it a little bit when you and I chatted, but what do you feel is the best pathway to enter Canada? As someone who has a plan to immigrate and have a family and stay here permanently?
Well, today things have changed back from the early days of immigration, the early days from when I was involved in immigration. Immigration goes back even further than when I started practicing. When I started practicing, the Canadian government put a lot of emphasis on selecting skilled workers and professionals based on their education and work experience outside of Canada. But the problem with that type of a system was when they came here, their qualifications, although recognized by the government for immigration purposes, were not recognized for professional purposes. So you had doctors, engineers, and other professionals driving taxis. That wasn't servicing Canada's need for those professionals. So today there's been a whole change in the way of thinking. And now we find that the best immigrants are those who come as either students or workers on either a study permit or on a work permit to gain education and or work experience or both before they enter a pathway for permanent residence. They have to ideally you come here as a young person, anywhere from 18 to 21, and you do a college or a university program, bachelor or master's degree, and then you get a post-graduation work permit, depending on the length of your study permit, could be up to 3 years. And once you get your work experience coupled with your education, you're on a fast-track path to get your PR because you have Canadian work experience and education. What better immigrants are those than those that have been in Canada for the last 5 years studying and working? Those are the ideal immigrants, and those are the ones that are going to get through without any difficulty. So to answer you, the pathway to permanent residence is to come here first on a study permit, ideally. Or if you've already completed your studies outside and you're not looking to do post-graduation study in Canada, then get yourself a closed work permit. That means a work permit based on a company offering you a job in a field that's in demand. We have a lot of clients bringing in people in the pharmaceutical or in machinists, even tool and die makers that have received experience in Europe or in India or the Philippines, and they're coming here based on their qualifications and they're getting work permits. And after they work here a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years, there's a pathway for permanent residence for those people as well.
And that is a great point. Well, I can definitely attest that I went through the basically study, pathway. I studied at Concordia University. I was in my last year. If you have kids that you want to basically have a successful and accelerated path to immigration, I definitely recommend that you get them to complete their studies in Canada if they have that opportunity. And I emphasize getting an internship 1,000%, because that is going to give you the opportunity to get that work experience before you graduate. And that will make things definitely easier. I went through that pathway. It was extremely effective. But now I want to get to the point where you have people who completed, like, my goodness, multiple master's degrees in their home country, and they just don't have the appetite to go back to school. They have great qualifications, whether they are in tech or in a field that is not dependent on their specific knowledge of a country. So meaning their work is pretty much transferable to any location. Like, I have a lot of clients who are in tech. We hire a lot of people offshore, so why can't they do the job, right? So now they are in that position where they want to land a job in Canada. But we are dealing with a chicken and egg situation, because we find some employers hesitate and they're worried about hiring them because now they feel that they have to jump over hoops in order to make that happen. And it sounds like that's something that you also help organizations too. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we work very closely with their Canadian companies and with the workers they want to hire in order to smooth out the process. In Quebec, we're very well situated in Quebec in that there is a facilitated processing, which means that there's about 50 occupations where you're not required to advertise the employer to find a Canadian permanent residence. There's already deemed to be a shortage of qualified workers in a number of fields. So that saves right away 30 days of advertising. So and you're allowed to select through your HR department or using a recruitment agency the temporary foreign worker that you feel best matches the job description that you need fulfilled. And where we come in is we help with all the paperwork, and we remove the mystery and the difficulty of the perceived difficulty of bringing in a temporary foreign worker, because it's not really that difficult. The Canadian government and the Quebec government is very open to helping businesses because it's in their interest as well. The government realizes that if the businesses thrive, it creates employment, not only for temporary foreign workers, but ultimately for Canadians, it creates employment, because these people come in and they need support staff, and they also train Canadians to do the work that they're doing, that they had to be brought into, because we didn't have any Canadians to do the work. And if the company grows and their revenue grows, ultimately they pay more taxes, they fund the services in our province, in our country. So it's a win-win for the governments, for the company that we support, and for the workers that come in on the temporary foreign worker program. It's a very, very overwhelmingly extremely successful, the temporary foreign worker program. Although there's a cap, when they're talking about permanent residence, there's a cap, and so many people that they accept under the permanent residency pathways. Until now, there has been no cap at all on the number of people allowed to come in on the temporary foreign worker program.
That is really good to know. And I can definitely attest to that using a story of one of my clients. So one of my clients was in Mexico, brilliant guy, very entrepreneurial. He came to me with this big dream of, I want to grow. I want to learn from the giants in my industry. And he's in tech. So we worked together. And initially, that little hurdle of, but I don't know if I'm eligible to work in Canada. How do I go about this, et cetera, et cetera. What actually happened was after, I helped him position himself the right way so that employers realize, oh my God, we want this guy. We do not care that he's not local. We really want him because he brings something to the table that we haven't seen with other candidates. And he ended up landing in one of the big tech companies. So I remember when he was going through the interview process, he was getting nervous and he was telling me, well, do I tell them that I don't have, the paperwork, I don't have the work permit? But when he ended up having the conversation, of course, they had in-house counsel. It ended up being like just a process that they had to go through. So it sounds like for organizations who don't have the in-house counsel, they can benefit from hiring you, because you make the process super easy. They don't have to worry about it, and it becomes a win-win situation, because they end up acquiring incredible and exceptional talent, and it doesn't end up being as stressful, because you make the process transparent and can take that over.
That's what it's all about, Nada, is that helping the companies realize their goals, and also supporting them to show that it's really lifting the mystery in all of this, that it's really not that difficult to bring in a temporary foreign worker. In fact, in many ways, it's easier to bring in a temporary foreign worker than it is to become a permanent resident, which is a much longer process. And the temporary foreign worker, depending on, there's also the global skilled talent stream. That's really fast. You can bring somebody in within a month or two.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a fast track. But you have to present I'm doing one right now, a labor benefits plan to show how it benefits the company, and ultimately the spinoff benefits for the country. And if you bring in these highly skilled individuals, for example, software engineers fall within that, an IT sector falls within the fast track of temporary foreign worker program. You're going to bring in people in a couple of months, and a permanent residence can take a couple of years. So it's really a good way to bring it to satisfy the labor market and the needs that a growing company has. And especially when they can't find the talent locally, it's not that difficult to go through the immigration process for them to get a work permit for people they desperately need in their company. And they see that. I have one client, he tried one or two. Now we're already in the 10th temporary foreign worker he's bringing in. Because
Wow.
yeah. So at the beginning he was reluctant. He says, "Well, I'm not so sure." Now he's really excited about it, and his company has been growing exponentially, really fast, and he's working in the artificial intelligence field, so which is a growing sector also.
That's incredible to know. So, if any of you are hiring managers here listening, maybe you are a smaller company and don't have the resources to hire an in-house lawyer, whether you're a startup or a mid-sized firm, then I highly recommend that you contact Herbert and learn more about, how he can help you. It's always valuable, whether you are an individual or an organization, to hire a professional who can expedite your ability to reach your destination. From what I'm hearing, there are multiple pathways, and you always want to learn about the best pathway for you, because your situation is very unique. Okay, I want to definitely switch gears right now to Mitchell. Mitchell, what do you feel makes Brownstein and Brownstein different? And I also wanted to ask you, like, it sounds like, it's not just immigration that, the firm helps with. There's multiple areas. But apart from all the areas that I want to learn about, what do you feel makes your firm different?
Well, we're a family firm. So my brother and I started. My son Andrew works there now. He's also a lawyer, next generation. And we do various areas of law. So my main practice was immigration while I was at the firm. For the last 8 years, I've been mayor. So now I'm considered an avocat en retraite, meaning that I'm not giving legal advice, but I still help out in the management and marketing. My son is doing something that I started doing before I left, which is wrongful dismissal labor law. When an employee is let go for either constructive or wrongful dismissal, meaning that they're sort of forced out to leave, or they're fired and they've been there for a significant period of time and are deserving of a proper settlement. And he works, as I did, on a no-fee basis based on a percentage of the settlement. So for individuals that may be in that position, that's something else that we do. And we understand it's a difficult time when you're out of a job and you're in between jobs looking for something new, and you've given your time and you've sacrificed your life providing service to that firm, and you deserve your fair share. So that's an area that we work in. And Herb has also worked in the area of family law. That's something that he does as well besides immigration. So those are the three main focuses: wrongful dismissal law for employees, family law, and immigration is really the main area that we've done for, I guess, 35 years now. And all areas are dealing with people, human beings in their sensitive moments when they're either facing the challenge of moving to a new country or dealing with family law issues or job issues and finding employment or losing employment. So it's helping people, which really makes our firm different and special. And that's what we're about. We're almost like, you have to be a little bit of a social worker and help people understand them when they're difficult moments.
Yeah, even though I'm definitely not a licensed therapist, and I definitely don't want to market myself as that. Some of my clients nickname me as a career therapist. So I can definitely understand the importance of treating people like humans, making them feel comfortable. I can definitely remember the memory of you being with me in that interview, Mitchell. I was so nervous as I was going through the process, and just having you there by my side, it just helped me calm down. And that's what I loved about your law firm. It didn't feel like, in the movies, you always think of a lawyer as someone who is intimidating, as someone who is super formal. But, it sounds like the way you treat your clients, and I can definitely, again, attest to that, is a way that makes them feel like they're not a number. And I definitely appreciate that about your firm.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And we're so curious because there's a lot of debate around that. And, this, live isn't just about immigration, but it's also about, having the bravery to start your own firm, going through career transitions. I am curious about how you find working together as a family. There's a lot of debate where people say you can't mix, family with business, but you're an example that basically contradicts that idea. Tell us a little bit more in terms of how you've been able to make it work.
Well, you do see a lot of successful individuals who've worked in family businesses, whether it's, commercial, entrepreneurial, retail, or professional like accountants and lawyers. And I think the reason why they succeed is, first of all, each other almost from birth. If you're siblings and or cousins, and there's a level of trust and understanding of who that other person is. So you'll understand their limitations and their strengths, and you'll be able to focus on those strengths and limitations and complement each other so that you can really succeed as a family. It's not just business, but it's a family working together for everybody's interest and wanting everybody to succeed as family members do. You always say, "Oh, I want my kids to do well. I want my siblings to do well." You want to work well with your parents. So yeah, there's that understanding of each other, and I think that makes a big difference.
That's amazing. We have a question here coming in, and if either of you could answer it. I think we want to clarify that you practice, you help across Canada, not just Quebec, right? Is that correct?
Right, Herb, I'll let you answer any legal questions.
Okay. There are certain areas of law that are considered federal in nature, federal in scope. That's the way our Constitution is established. For example, immigration is a federal jurisdiction. The only reason that Quebec is able to delve into immigration is that the federal government signs an agreement with them in 1990, delegating some power to Quebec, not all of it. I mean, there's some talk now, the Premier of Quebec wants all the power of immigration, but the Prime Minister of Canada said simply no. You have what you have, and we're not giving you any more. So Quebec has economic power over economic class, but not under family class, and not refugee either. With that being said, there's some areas of law that are provincially based. That's why in Quebec we have in civil law we have a civil law province. We have the Civil Code of Quebec that only applies in Quebec, whereas in the rest of Canada they have a common law jurisdiction. And so, for example, in the area of labor law, when you're dealing with the Quebec Labor Code, it's Quebec jurisdiction. The Ontario Labor Code would be Ontario jurisdiction. If you're dealing with the public sector, the federal public sector, then it's federal law. But that would only apply to employees who are unionized within the public sector. Now, the question is a wrongful dismissal in Ontario for a private company, for a non-unionist, but that would fall under Ontario law. So you'd need to be a member of the Law Society of Ontario to be able to practice in Ontario in the area of wrongful dismissal. So we do have a number of lawyers that we work with in Ontario that we could refer the case to. But because of the different procedures, the different boards, the different tribunals that oversee Ontario cases, we would want to defer to a practitioner who's experienced before their courts, which are not the same courts as our courts in Quebec for Quebec companies, to answer that question. So our lawyer, he is a member of the Quebec Bar, and his practice is restricted to Quebec, to employers that are based in Quebec, and basically employees who are based in Quebec. You may have an employer who's based outside Quebec, but if their employee is working inside Quebec, then it's Quebec law that applies. So if it's a wrongful dismissal in Ontario, we would defer to a legal practitioner in Ontario who's a member of the Law Society of Upper Canada to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that, which takes me to another question. What do you think people should look for when they hire a lawyer? What is advice that you would give them to make sure that they're making the right choice?
Is that question directed
for her?
Okay. Well, the first thing I think it's very important. The way we get most of our clients now, after being in practice for almost 35 years, is by referral. We already have a name for ourselves. Reputation is very important. It takes years to develop a reputation, but once you have a reputation, your client base alone are your promoters. Very often, my clients mostly come in through the referral network, especially in the area of immigration. I also practice family law. I've been less involved in the area of family law. I've done it more frequently now over the last 10 years. So there I am also getting referrals as people get to know that I do that area of law, because I was more known as an immigration lawyer until recent years. Now I'm doing both disciplines. So, but in choosing a lawyer, it's important that it's best if you get it through a recommendation, I would say. Somebody who has already used the services. If you don't know, if you're not sure, go on the Google site, read some of the reviews. It'll give you an idea of the individual that you're considering hiring, and check his track record. See how many years he's been working in the particular field. See if he's published anything in the area, if he has, and and see if he's knowledgeable. And then you may want to reach out to him and have an initial, not a full consultation, but like what we offer is a 10 or 15-minute chat, so the client can get an idea, feeling if there's a good synergy there. Because not only does he have to be knowledgeable in the area of law that he's doing, you have to be able to work with him.
Absolutely.
Because, personality is very important. Character is very important. His availability is very important. You have to see how busy he is. If he has too many cases and he doesn't have time to dedicate to your legal problem, even if he's the best lawyer in that area, it's not going to do you any good if he doesn't have the time to dedicate to your case. So I think that's also important. You have to check. You have to speak to him and see if he's comfortable handling on your case, if he's dealt with similar cases. And if you like the direction he's taking, if you also like his advice and what he suggests, that the pathway that he suggests, whether it's in immigration, whether it's in family law, in any area of law, you have to see whether you're on the same page. It's very important for me also when I take on a client that ultimately that we're on the same page.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if we're not, we're going to be at loggerheads. It's not going to be a good working relationship. You have to work as a team. I always say, my client and I, we have
I
to
love
work
that.
together for the
I
benefit
love
of the
that.
case. Yeah.
Yes, and the fact that both of you are here when we all know that lawyers are very busy, and it is a huge testament that you make time, to create that social impact. Yes, and I definitely agree with, it's not just about the competency, it's about whether you get along and have chemistry. It's kind of like working with a doctor, and that doctor makes you feel uncomfortable. So then you're not going to be able to open up and share with them everything. Wonderful. So this question goes to either of you, Herbert or Mitchell. Um, you've both been hiring managers in the firm. I'm curious to learn more about, what do you look for when you hire people within your firm?
We may have different perspectives. You can ask me the
Maybe
same
maybe
question.
we'll let both of you weigh in. Do you want to go first, Herbert?
Well, I'm the one that's hiring currently for the last 8-9 years, but before that, for the first 20 plus years, Mitchell was doing all the hiring. So he would call me in if he wanted a second opinion, but ultimately he would go through, he would screen all the CVs and all the applicants and all the candidates, whether it was for a lawyer stash position or a paralegal intern or a paralegal employee. He would be the first one to screen them out, and then he would introduce me to the ones he was considering. But in terms of how I do the hiring, I think it's very important, first of all, that they have the qualifications necessary to do the work. I prefer hiring inside, which
Mhm.
means I prefer that I train them, that I'm able to train them my way, and also in the way we do our work here, because we're a small firm that works as a team, and we have our own style and our own methods of working together. And the opportunity that I have with our students is that I get them from before they're conditioned to work somewhere else. They come in here and it's their first experience in a law firm. So I'm able to mold them. I'm able to teach them, to direct them into the methodology of how we work here in our firm in Brownstein and Brownstein. And they come here for 3 months or 6 months, depending on the length of their internship. And then afterwards, I'm able to determine whether whether that we have a need to, and whether they have a contribution to make to our firm, and consider hiring them at the end of their internship. Most of our hiring is done in-house.
Mhm.
People that have worked with us, either as paralegal interns, secretarial interns, or lawyer interns.
Some of our best long-term paralegals were individuals that came from like O'Sullivan College, which is a paralegal school, and they started off with the stash and then they stayed on. But I continue to do hiring as mayor, but now it's for 12 different departments. I'm not
Wow.
in charge department, but they have to come. Anybody at the higher level in terms of managers has to go through council to be approved. And there's still the collective agreements and all that. But I think our best staff are the ones that have been here for a long time. And the question is not only bringing them in, but retaining them. So you have to find somebody who's interested and who wants to really be a part of your team long term. Because once they're there long term, then they're self-sufficient. We had one paralegal that basically serviced one employer, a big company, to do work permits. I mean, that's basically what she did for about 5-6 years. She was really almost dedicated to that one company. And she really understood the company and she understood what their needs were. So it's good having staff that are with you for a long time and that understand your needs.
So it sounds like it's not just the competency that you look for. I mean, law is a very regulated field, so people need to have all of the qualifications and the knowledge in order to practice. But that sounds to me like, from what you're sharing, is not the entire criteria. You look for work ethic and you look for someone who's going to grow within your firm. That sounds to me like a big thing that you look for, right?
Yeah, and it's
Right.
also, we have to, somebody that's interested in the work that they're doing. It's very
Passionate about
important.
it.
Yeah, but there has to be somewhat of a passion, a dedication, a commitment. And if you're just going to go to a job for the paycheck, you're not going to last very long, and you're going to get you're going to get itchy. You're going to want to do something else. You're not going to want to stay long term if you're not really enjoying uh, the type of work that you're doing every day.
And you have to treat them like family. Every summer we would have a retreat for usually on a weekday where we just close the office and go to one of the lawyers' country houses. We've had ski days, we had lunches. You have to treat them like family because they are really your family. You spend more time with them than your own family when on the work week. You're at the office and you get to know each other very well.
And our best employees have been those who felt a vested interest in our firm. They felt part of it. They felt when we succeeded, they succeeded. So they really wanted us to do well, and they were committed. So if they have to work one night late because to get a file in because we have a deadline, they do so willingly and with tremendous devotion, and we reward them as a result. And if they need time off for family to go see their child in a school play during the week, or there's a work-life balance here, or they want to take off a day here or there, I never say no. I'm always very accommodating to their personal life schedule. And I think that's the benefit of working in our firm, is that we're very family oriented and we understand the value, both of us having families, we understand the value of family. And both of us wanted to also be involved when our children are young, growing up in different activities. I never missed an activity that one of my children had, either in sports or at school. I always was there, whether it was a sports team event or it was a school activity that the parents were invited to, and it was in the middle of a work week. I always made accommodation. And if my staff needed to go to see their child in a school play, whether it was a holiday play or whatever, we always accommodated whatever their needs were.
My next activity in 10 minutes from now is called Muffins with the Mayor. So I'm going to the IT and finance department. I'm going to get to chat with the staff that work there, and I'm looking forward to it because I'm going to learn a little bit about who these people are. I know them on a professional level, but I get to know what's happening in their lives. And I do that in every department. So, the little things that you do. So I'm taking 45 minutes of their time, and we're going to have coffee and muffins and talk, and maybe
That's
something
awesome.
healthy like some fruit. But looking forward to that next.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap up, everyone. I'm going to end with an interesting, event that Mitchell shared with me. Little, not very well known, at least to me, fact is that Mitchell's actually an actor. And he organizes amazing community events. So if you happen to be in the area of Montreal, I just dropped a link. You should totally check it out. And support the wonderful community that is involved in this activity. All right, I wanted to take the time to thank you both, Herbert and Mitchell, for being here. It's incredibly amazing to catch up with the two of you after so many years of helping me immigrate to Canada. I hope everyone enjoyed this and got a lot of value. We're just scratching the surface here. I encourage you all to check out. I will add this in the show notes. I encourage you to check out, their website. I encourage you to reach out if you feel after listening to all of this, there's something that resonates with you and you need help with a certain area. Amazing law firm. If you are an employer, a business owner, a hiring manager, and you want to learn more about how you can bring in top talent and get help with foreign workers, definitely encourage you to reach out to Herbert. All right, everyone. I hope you have an amazing day, and send me a DM if you'd like a link to the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Looking forward to